My name is Jim Doty. I'm the founder and director of the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, which is sponsoring this event tonight, which is called Conversations on Compassion. Our mission is to study the neuroscience of compassion and also the peripheral physiology so that we understand the value proposition of being compassionate. We have three parts. One is basic research. One is education. And one of the projects in that regard is we put on conferences, or if you will, we are conveners of conferences, one called the Science of Compassion. We recently did also Compassion in Healthcare, and we recently co-sponsored an event called Compassion and Empathy in Society. We also do, if you will, interventions or training programs that allow individuals to potentiate their compassion. We know that almost everything in life can be represented by a bell-shaped curve. So if we look at compassion, in fact, on the right are people like the Dalai Lama, Desmond Tutu, and others who might come to mind, who by the very core and essence are extraordinarily compassionate people who have a deep sense of the suffering of others and have this incredible motivation to alleviate that suffering. Then on this side, and I would say Wall Street bankers, but I won't tonight. On this side, we have sociopaths and others who either don't get it, and there's probably nothing you can do for them to get it, but in between are most of us. And we know that when somebody lives a life of intention in regard to compassion, it has a profound effect on their health, well-being, and mental state, and ultimately their longevity. And I give the example of a study that was done whereby women over the age of 65 were divided into two groups. One did volunteer work or service to others. The other did not. And in this self-report study, it was found that the people who did service to others actually had an increase in their life expectancy twofold compared to the control group. So when you act compassionately with intent, it has a profound effect on yourself and others, and ultimately gives meaning to one's life. And that's really what we are all about. So prior conversations on compassion, we've had spiritual and religious leaders like who we had? Eckhart Tolle, Sadhguru, Sri Ravi Shankar, Amma, and we've also had scientists. We've had business people. So it's really a broad spectrum of society, and the common thread that connects all of these people is that fundamentally they lead lives of service to others and serve as examples to all of us of possibilities and what we in our own lives may wish to strive for, and also demonstrate how profound an effect doing so can have. So without further ado, we're going to begin this conversation. Our guest tonight is actually a young man, and I ran across some of his work and thought it would be an interesting idea to have a conversation. It's nice to see a young person who, with intention, desires to improve the world, and also at a young age has done some very interesting things. So tonight's guest is Kosta Grammatis. I assume that's Greek.
It's Greek, yes.
So we're going to talk about the Greek financial crisis tonight. Actually, one of the interesting things about him is that he attended our most recent California State University, right? Cal State University, Channel Islands. The interesting thing is that early on, he decided to do something and do activities that were useful, and he's combined a love of science and technology to do that. And one of his early projects, and we're going to talk about many of these, was a project using a balloon to, I think, measure pesticides and was in the atmosphere, and got a grant as an undergraduate to do that. and I think he was even surprised he got that grant. But it actually led to some wonderful things, and to include working on SpaceX and being involved with the design of I guess a satellite, or and leading some of those teams. He also was involved with the creation of a vision project, but and also interestingly enough, something called eyeborg, which was a device put into an individual who had lost his eye through an accident, and actually hooked up a camera to that. And then more recently, and I think quite interesting, and I think this is a topic that people have been talking about and with some of our high-tech companies like Google and Facebook, but it's how do we bring the internet to the world? And I think 6 to 8% of people do not have internet access. That's billions of people. And so he has begun a project. I think it started out as a, what's it called, a fundraising project?
Crowdfunder?
Yeah,
Crowdfunding?
crowdfunding project to, was it a bankrupt company that had a satellite?
Yep.
And you guys wanted to put it into geosynchronous orbit?
It was already there.
Yeah, and to use to bring internet access. And so there's a entity, and I think it's a nonprofit called a Human Right. Mm-hmm. And then now there's a company called All of Us, right? So what interests me here is obviously Costa's young age, the fact that he's worked across disciplines, and pretty much all of his projects have related to benefiting others. And we shall begin. So welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So and I think I have shared with some of you, so I grew up in poverty. My father was an alcoholic and my mother was an invalid, and neither went to college, and we were on public assistance. And, it's difficult to overcome that for many people. I was blessed to be able to do so. But when I went to college, I had no understanding whatsoever of college, because I had no role models. I didn't understand it, and I was, like many people, not that I just wasn't prepared. So before I got my act together, I was actually asked to leave the university, and but I refused to leave, and so they let me stay. So when I left the university, I actually had a 2.53 GPA. That's not very good. And so it was interesting because I wanted to go to med school. And so the average GPA at that time to get into med school was 3.79, I think. So I was slightly lower than. And it's interesting because we actually had a pre-med committee, and you actually had to go through to this pre-med committee to get a letter of recommendation. So I went to get this letter of recommendation, and do you know what they told me? They said, we're not going to set up an appointment for you because it's a waste of everyone's time. Now, that's really insulting, isn't it? So I actually said, I will not leave until I have an appointment. So I sat down and time passed. And they realized I was serious, so they actually did give me an appointment to meet with this committee of 3 people. And so I did have this appointment. I walked in, and can you imagine what it's like when you're 20 years old to walk into a group of professors who are sitting there like this because they think you're wasting their time. So the strategy I took in that particular instance was an aggressive strategy because I didn't let them speak. And what I said to them and confronted them with was, what right do you have to destroy people's dreams? There is not one shred of evidence, actually, that anything above average level intelligence has any correlation with success in anything, especially med school. And in fact, my experience has been that I know many 4.0 assholes who are doctors. And that was true then, and it's true now. Having a 4.0 doesn't give you empathy, it doesn't give you compassion, it doesn't give you kindness. So at the end of our discussion, which I said was one-sided, they actually ended up giving me the highest recommendation that they could. And then actually a medical school actually accepted me, and without a degree. So I never got the degree, and the med school accepted me without a degree and with the 2.53. Now what's interesting is I'm now the largest donor to that medical school, and on the board of governors, and the dean of the medical school, I endowed his chair, so they're really nice to me. But they still haven't accepted anybody else with those types of credentials. That's me. So I'm not sure what all that means. So anyway, so you can have success without. So I told you a little bit about my background, but I know it says on your website that you come from a background of, I think, science and technology or innovation and technology. Why don't you tell us about your background?
Well, it's kind of a similar story. You couldn't pay me to sit in class. I hated school. I was not good at it. And I think I had like a 2 point something terrible. I ran for Resident Hall Association president for some reason because I wanted something to do other than go to class. And they wouldn't let me run. They wouldn't let me do it, but I won anyway. So like similar kind of thing. Like I didn't want to get a normal degree. I got like 3 wrapped into one: English, art, and engineering.
That's a common combination, isn't it?
Yeah, because for me, the currency of life is experience. That's the only thing that really matters. Like at the end of the day, what are you going to have? You're going to have a plate full of life experiences that you can reflect on and be like, I learned so much. I had so much fun. I can't really pigeonhole myself in like one thing. I got to try everything. I like trying, and so that was kind of my educational undergraduate experience. It was like a lot of arguing with professors about how they're too stuck in the same way of thinking.
I'm sure that made you very popular.
It did, with the people who were cool. The cool professors, the bohemian ones who hadn't become totally cynical.
Well, it's interesting you say that because my own experience has been that when an individual is secure within themselves, they have no problem with somebody who is looking at the world in an alternative way. It's the people who are very insecure and become rigid based on that insecurity that they don't want to hear anything because it makes them uncomfortable.
Oh, so much of that. And it's really, because, and I'm saying this at Stanford, I'm going to get shot after this.
No.
To take you back.
Only 4 people in here have concealed weapons permits, so. And I know each one.
A lot of people in academia have gone, their entire life is academia. They went to school and they never left. So if you come in with some sort of outside ideas that sort of challenge the status quo, challenge that system, because academia is a system, that can be very disruptive.
Well, I think the problem is that for many of those individuals, that is their entire worth, and they have chosen that path, and they believe that path embodies worth. And when you're either not going through that path or not going through the right little checklists, they can resent that sometimes.
Yeah, because they had to pay their dues getting their PhD.
Right.
Why shouldn't you? All those things.
No, that's right.
But for me, when I was younger, and a little part of my story is that I was one of those ADHD kids who was early on in the 90s, part of the big experiment of how much Ritalin can you pump into a kid before he starts to not like it anymore. And that really ruined a lot of my childhood. So I came into college a little bit resentful of this institution that thought that I had the problem. Like, I couldn't sit through their classes because they were really boring, but it was my fault that I couldn't sit through their boring classes. You know, like, why doesn't it be more engaging? I was building jet engines in my garage. I was, like, doing all sorts of chemistry in my backyard. Like, I blew up so much stuff. As a kid, super curious. I loved doing things. But the minute you bring that curiosity in the classroom, well, I remember one teacher was like, we don't cover that in the textbook, so we're not going to talk about it. And I'm like, but I'm curious. I want to know. Isn't the point of this place to learn? Isn't that what education is all about? I made some friends and a lot of enemies. Education, as it stands today, the institution of it, is not designed really for outside of the box thinking, unless it's inside this box. Like, you can innovate, you can dream, and you can publish a paper. But if you innovate and dream and build a company, well, you have to leave. You know, and they're changing some of that, but there's so many different ways to think outside of the box and create. And that's part of my research project as undergrad. I wrote for a research grant to some weird board on my campus that didn't really understand the rules. And they gave it to me, but as a student. They gave me like $14,000. And they said, like, oh, have fun. And no one really knew how to cut a check to a student because they didn't have like a professor yet. So they're like, you got to go find a professor. And I'm like, but I don't want a professor. Just let me do it. Like, I'm fine. Don't worry. I found a professor. I went through 4 professors because I could fire them, which was the coolest thing. Because it's usually the other way, where like the professor brings in the money and then like the students are the slave. But I was like, no, this isn't working for me. I'm so sorry. Like, I need to find someone else who's a little more malleable and flexible in their thinking. And I was doing this huge research project. I just wanted to build things. That's all I wanted to do. It's all I wanted to do my entire life.
Well, actually, why don't you tell them exactly what it was? Because it's quite fascinating, and it actually crosses a number of disciplines. And so,
it was called the Balloon Project, and it was called the Balloon Project and branded and marketed beautifully because no one understood what I was doing at school. What it was an air sampling system that would go up on a big giant balloon and take air samples at different levels. And what we were looking for was a pesticide called methyl bromide, which is banned by the Montreal Protocol and is used in strawberry fields. I didn't really care about that part. Like, that was going to come later because I had to design all the instruments and build all
and
the...
I think that's the...
That's what I did. And so I lived... Like, we didn't have an engineering program at my school, so I just got an internship at a machine shop. And we didn't have we had a physics minor, so I would just read everything I could on the internet about like electrical engineering because I had to design all the circuit boards and all the control systems and write all the software and machine all the parts and do all of this stuff. But I loved it because it was just solving problem after problem. Like, that's all I wanted to do. And the professors would I'd sit down with them for like our meeting and they're like, so what are you doing? And I'm like, you don't care. There was one professor, his name is Phil Hampton. He gets teaching, like the art of teaching, allowing someone, like the Socratic method, like allowing someone break themselves and just kind of guide them through the process of learning. Hero. Like, it was so wonderful. But there were so many other teachers that I ran into who needed it done their way, who knew, like, weren't interested in allowing me to fail, weren't interested in allowing me to try new things. And as soon as there was one professor, I won't say his name.
Go ahead.
He, the minute it started like winning awards, because this project I entered it in undergraduate research competitions and like beat Cal Poly 2 years in a row, I think, in engineering, and we didn't have an engineering program at our school, so it was kind of ridiculous. And the minute he started learning that it was going places, then he started caring. And then he started to try and control parts of it. And because he kind of let me free run. That was the first professor we had on board. And it was such a fascinating experience. Here's this kid who's recovering from his ADHD diagnosis and living a life off medication, which is misery. Don't ever want to. Okay, some people it really helps, but for me it was miserable, okay? And I'm trying to like make my own way without the need of mind-altering chemicals to learn what I want to learn.
Let's not get carried. There are some good mind-altering.
There's some great ones, but they only a few people could allow me to go on that journey and build the things that I wanted to do and give me that freedom so that I could just explore, which is what I think education should be a little more of.
So were your parents all for this type of activity?
I was not easily controlled. Yes, they were like, finally, he's not failing out of class. This is great. I did independent studies like solely. Yeah.
So then, and I didn't mention, but Kosta's also was a 2013 TED Prize finalist. He's won a number of awards. He was working at the MIT Media Lab. So it shows you what this type of energy and interest and curiosity and on some level grit, the power of that actually. So tell us about your work with vision and lead us into the eyeborg project.
I just left SpaceX.
So how did you end up in SpaceX?
I wrote a lot of emails
To
every VP who had their email on the website. And I was like, hey, I have a liberal studies degree. Can I work for you? I didn't say that, but but they found out quickly enough. And there was one guy who responded to me, only one out of like the 6 VPs, Hans Koningsman. And he's the VP of avionics. And he said, sure, I'll talk to you. Sure. And we got on the phone. I'm like, I'd love an internship. It would be so much fun to just intern for you guys and build stuff and make rockets. How about it? And he's like, sorry, no. And I just kept emailing him. And they'd blow up a rocket, and I'd be like, congratulations, I hope you're okay. I hope no one was hurt. You know? Like, I built a relationship. And when I graduated college, I showed him kind of the work I did with this research project. And he said, why don't you come in? And I told him I was looking for something. And he said, come on in. And before I knew it, I had a job. It was awesome. They hired me as an experiment. They're like, we don't know how this will work.
But you ended up being intimately involved in a number of different aspects. Why don't you share with us that?
Yes. SpaceX is a lifestyle. That's not a job. It's a lifestyle. You live at work. I would wake up at 2 in the morning, or 2 in the afternoon, show up at work till 6 in the morning. Like, it was ridiculous. And I was responsible for a small satellite that was designed to send messages from space. The idea being...
Now, you weren't initially assigned to this, were you?
Over there, they give you as much rope as you'll ever want. Like, there's so much work to do. There's so much responsibility. Like, I was responsible engineer for like a few components in the avionics bay. Like, Tina Sue, like, who's 29 now or something, like maybe 30, and she was like 27 or something at the time, was like responsible for all of the avionics on Falcon 1 rocket. Like, if you rise to the occasion there, you will be given the responsibility. So that's what I did, and was responsible for this small satellite because they wanted, it was like an experiment to see if you could send messages through the, have you ever heard of the Iridium constellation? I don't know how to explain this.
So this is the fixed, this is for the phones that can be used anywhere in the world?
Satellite phones.
Right, yeah.
Satellite phones. So the idea was like, could you make a satellite phone call from space? And the answer is yes, you can. And the reason why they wanted to know that is because when you have a rocket in space, it goes around the Earth. And when you hit, you have to have ground stations at every point on the Earth. It has to be visible, has to see a ground station. Maybe you've seen like Apollo 13, they're like, oh, we have to switch you over to the ground station, things like that. And they're really expensive to operate. There's a satellite system called TDRS that does this. That's how the International Space Station works. It talks this like kind of deep space communication system, but it's like $127 a minute to use. And ground stations, and you have to buy it in a week's chunk. And then ground stations, like you have to staff them and run them, and they're kind of a big deal too. So we're like, what if we just use satellite phones on the rocket? Like let's see if that would work. But we had a whole bunch of questions, so we just built a test, an experiment to see if that would work.
And it did.
And we blew it up, the first one. And then the next one worked.
Great. So how long were you there?
I was there for a year.
So then did you ever meet Elon Musk?
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm surprised you're not at Tesla.
Elon is the most intense human being. The man is mission driven to the core. It's really inspiring. It's really inspiring. I couldn't work that hard. Like, the man works so hard. I don't understand how someone can work that hard. Like, we're lazy. He can do like so much. He can do all of our work in like 1 hour. A lifetime of work. It's crazy. He's got a car company. He's got a space company. He's building satellite company now. He's got a Hyperloop company, and a solar power company. Like, when does he sleep? He has 8 kids. Yeah, like he has some ridiculous number of kids.
He's not sleeping, I guess.
And I heard he's designing a school for his kids. I'm like, in what time? Like, how does he do that? I don't get it.
He's probably on Ritalin.
I got a lot done on that stuff.
So now let's switch over then after you left and.
So I left, and then I was living in a warehouse in San Francisco that a bunch of weirdos were living in, and I was like, I want to build something, and I was reading about this weird guy. His name is Rob Spence, and he was a filmmaker. He made this movie called Let's All Hate Toronto. It's about how Canadians hate Toronto because they don't like their big city. They don't want to be associated with that. There's like this inner dislike. I don't understand how to explain it. It's a Canadian thing. And he wore an eye patch. He kind of looked like a pirate. And he was in Wired magazine, talking about how he wanted to build a video camera that fit inside his false eye so that he could transmit video and make these documentaries from the perspective of his missing eye. And I wrote him one email, and I said, I'll build that for you. I had no idea how to build that. But I was like batting pretty good and doing things I didn't know how to do. Just try. And so he came out to San Francisco, him and his dad. They drank 1 bottle of wine apiece. I was not drinking at all. And they were like wasted. And we were just hanging out. And he's like, what do you want to do, Costa? I'm like, if you bring me to Toronto and let me sleep on your couch and feed me, I'll build it for you. And because that's all I wanted, more life experience. And so that's what happened. And so over the span of 4 months, something like that, I had a camera in my face all day long as I engineered this video camera that fits inside the size of a prosthetic eye, and he can put it inside of his face, and it has full motility, so it moves in sync with the other eye. It's like a normal thing, and it transmits video to a handheld receiver, which he can then stream to the internet, make documentaries, whatever he wants to do. And now that is on its 4th revision. We built a whole team, and I'm not really involved anymore, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the first into the I'd never really left. This is I'm leaving the country. And then I got famous. It got crazy. All of a sudden we're in Time Magazine's Best Invention in 2009. This is inappropriate. This is not, I do not deserve this. You give that to someone else. and they were flying us around to go talk on TV shows. They were on the Today Show.
You guys should check out this guy, because I think he is a little weird.
He's the weirdest guy.
And the thing is, it doesn't really look like an eye. It looks like a cyborg eye. So I would assume talking to the guy, it's pretty weird, because there's this weird thing looking at you.
And he's always trying to quit smoking whenever I go visit him, and he's always cranky. He's always cranky.
Interesting. Maybe that's the next invention.
What? Rob, I love you. It's okay. He knows I love him.
I think so far this trajectory has been about innovation, curiosity, seeing how you can test your own limits and learn. So where does really helping people come into this? What was the final, if you will, switch, or maybe it was all preparatory, to get involved with bringing the internet to the world? And, I think all of us have heard that this has been promoted by the founders of Facebook and Google, et cetera, but now you've taken this on, and there are two components, right? A human right, and then all of us.
Nailed it.
Okay. So what made that happen? Why did you do that? Is this just another technology challenge?
Well, I couldn't be a hedonist for so long. I was like 23 years old.
How old's Justin Bieber?
I don't know. He's like 23 years old, and he's a baby.
Go ahead.
He's rebelling right now.
I'm sorry, Justin. Justin and I are like...
Not defending Justin Bieber, for the record. Yeah, the goal of life, the currency of my existence was having as many unique life experiences as possible. I would do anything to do something that not many people got to do, whether that's building a bionic eye or launching something in space or like living in a warehouse with weirdos in San Francisco. I had like rain gutters in my room because the roof leaked. Anyway, at that point, I was done. I had arrived. I had no money to my name. I had been on TV more times than I was like worth. It was ridiculous. But I had decided that I was like, oh, I'm ready. I'm here. I've made it. I've made my place in the world. I was done. I've arrived. That's kind of how I felt. And I said, it's time to, as every super uber wealthy person would do, is they're going to start their nonprofit. They're going to give back. And give back a little bit. and that was it. It was this switch in my own head of, not that I had any wealth, not that I had any of this stuff, but I just felt that I needed to start focusing on that. And then it got actually real. Like, it was just a kind of an off-the-cuff decision. But then you started thinking about being of service and what it meant to be of service. And it started to be really appealing, really, really appealing. One of my favorite experiences on this world tour of life experience was volunteering in a soup kitchen in Boston called the Haley House, where all these people from all walks of life come in, and I fed them every morning. And this is when I was trying to get an MIT, and they were rejecting me over and over. And it was incredibly humbling experience of meeting people who had so much. I didn't have much, but they had so much less. And yet every day they came in hopeful, and every day they came in and they taught me things, and every day they just wanted to be heard, and they were just as human as all of us were. And that became kind of a flag for me, that experience of being of service, that brought a new kind of thinking. It's I'm trying to explain evolving thought, where at first I was totally not conscious of any of, I thought that we'd solve poverty in the 90s, I thought that was over. But once, so anyway, I got invited to a innovation think tank in Berlin called Palomar 5, which had 30 people under the age of 30 who were invited to live, work, and play in a warehouse and solve problems. That's all I knew about it. It was the weirdest thing I've ever been. We arrived, they gave us blue jumpsuits. I was like, am I in a cult or what? And we were living in something called the Malzfabrik, which was a beer factory in Berlin. and they said, like, go innovate. And it was run by young people too. Deutsche Telekom gave like a bunch of 22-year-olds 3 million euros or something, 2 million euros, and said like, go. And Deutsche Telekom was like, we're doing this so we can see how millennials think because we don't get them. Like that was the whole point. They were watching us. And they wanted to know what the future of work would look like, how they could incentivize us to like show up to their cubicle lives. Like it was not going to be for us. So they gave us unlimited budgets, and they flew in all these people from all these walks of life, and we were like, all right, what are we going to do? What do you guys want to do? So first we built a mini golf course, of course, most important thing.
You need to have that to be able to think.
Yeah, then we blew up stuff. Like so much stuff was blown up. It was huge. The Deutsche Telekom still doesn't know about how much stuff was blown up. I don't know. They bought a bunch of spray paint and anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not telling the story. It's in Germany. I don't think I can get in trouble, can I? and then we like we're just wild. We're just being wild. It was like spring break for like nerds. and while I was there, I met this wonderful woman whose name is Tori Hogan. And Tori Hogan wrote this book. It's called Beyond Good Intentions, and she's like the ultimate critic of the aid industry. And I was sitting in a bus with her, we were going all these places, and I'm like, Tori, tell me about developing countries. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And she's like, oh, it's the worst. She's always had all these bad things to say about how aid is broken, about how we're hurting more people than we're helping, how we're not asking critical questions, how we're not, making. It's called the aid industry. Like, shouldn't it be putting itself out of business if it was really doing its job? And being like this hypercritical person, which she is, and I adore her for that. And it started me thinking, I'm like, well, how does aid work? And I started asking all these questions, and she's like, well, we send people out there, and they do their work, and then they report to their offices, and I'm like, how does like education, like how do you do that? And they're like, well, we'll build a school or something. We build a school, like that's such an old idea. Like, just give them a tablet. Is that cool? Like what? She's like, tablet, there's no electricity. What are you talking about? I'm like, what do you mean? They have cell phones, something. Like, no, they don't have cell phones. Like, internet? They don't have internet. You mean you're telling me these people don't have Wikipedia? I couldn't survive without Wikipedia. And that was like, what? How do you not have, how can you do anything? How can you accomplish anything in this world without internet access? Because everything that I had accomplished, all the bionic eyes, working for SpaceX, all that other stuff, I learned everything through the internet. I would just Google furiously. And so here I was like baffled that people would be stuck with like the books that somebody gave them at some point in time.
They were 20 years old.
I was 20 years old, yes.
Yeah.
I was very young.
No, I mean the books are 20 years old.
Yeah, the book, and I was 20 years old. But I didn't know this. It was just totally news for me. And then I was mulling this over, and and sort of thinking about that, and I went and Googled like internet world stats, and 5 billion people don't have internet access, and I was like, what? 5 billion people at the time, now it's 4 billion. 5 billion people didn't have internet access. There's 7 billion people on the planet. That means only 2 billion have internet access. You guys use internet every day. I know you do. You guys probably are at a point where you don't like it anymore.
Some are using it right now.
Yeah. Who's live tweeting? Someone was saying. And I'm just going to say this, it's a Library of Alexandria that can't be burnt down. Okay? It is the world's knowledge, like at your fingertips. And it's in your phone. It's crazy if you stop and think about it. There seems like there's some people here who lived before the internet. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I mean that in the nicest way. How much
Yeah, the nicest way.
I'm sorry.
He's surprised you're even alive. But paper, like writing things up, that's crazy. That's wild. And there's still like a whole, like there's countries that are just operated this way still. That's mind-boggling. And so I was watching as I was mulling this huge fact over in my head, like about how somebody could survive without internet access. And I was watching The Daily Show,
streaming online in Germany because I wanted to get my American shows in. And Jon Stewart had this kid on that whose name was William Kamkwamba. And William Kamkwamba was this young African from Malawi who couldn't afford to go to school. And he, over the span of, I think, 4 years, reinvented the windmill. And he was using it to power a small light so that he could read books that he was getting from the library. That's how he was getting his education, was through these ancient books. And Jon Stewart goes like, he was amazed, like, and they wrote a book about him. It's called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, I think. And Jon Stewart goes cracking jokes like, you ever heard of, you ever use mini fridges now? Like, what do you think of like electricity on demand or anything? And Jon Stewart goes, how do you feel about Google? And William goes, what animal is a Google? And they put him in front of a computer, and he types in a windmill, and he goes, where was this the entire time? Where was Google the entire time? And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. First off, aid in developing countries, people can solve their own problems, okay? They just need resources. They just need the tools to solve their own problems, okay? They don't need, like, your shirts. Shirts are nice, but, like, resources so they can make their own job. Don't kill the textile industry by dropping off your free shirts. The William really just encapsulated a huge opportunity to create a better world where people can solve their own problems. And it really resonated with me because I used the internet to solve many of my own problems, and I've been highly successful at that point. And I thought, wow, if we can get the rest of the world online, what could be accomplished? William Kamkwamba reinvented the windmill. If he had known, if he had access to all the scholarly literature and all, what bigger problem could he have solved? What kind of Einsteins are living in developing countries that don't have access to just the resources so they could be a contributor to bigger world problems that we need to all be collaborating on? And that was like the real impetus behind starting a nonprofit charged with ensuring every person has access to the internet.
So tell us about that. We were talking about crowdfunding.
Yeah, okay, well, I was still 20-ish. And I've learned a lot. It's been 6 years. This was before, and so much has changed. So much has changed. Right now, Mark Zuckerberg is running internet.org, Internet for Everyone. Google's got the Loon project and is working on Internet for Everyone. Elon Musk just is talking about a satellite project that he's going to do to cover the world in free internet, or in internet. And so is Richard Branson. Everybody's doing it. It's like the hip thing. And I am floored. I am beside myself. I'm like, finally, guys. I've been trying to get meetings with you for forever. You won't take them, but I'm glad you're doing it on your own. You didn't need my help. Telecommunications is a $1 trillion industry. It is monopolistic, it is slow, and it is one of the hardest things to make a change in. It's like I entered the world's biggest bureaucracy. I'm like, guys, let's do something. I got invited to speak, just to give you an example, got invited to speak at a conference, Satellite 2010 conference. I was like the youngest person there by like 25 years. And I go up on stage and I'm like, guys, like ideas, we could do so much more with satellites. And they're like, eh. Like they did, they were just, nobody cared at all. At all. I was so pumped. They were not. And that was kind of like my battle, trying to make trying to make people care about telecommunications, which is like the most, it's the least sexy thing. It's like people don't even know how it works. Did you know that there are cables across the ocean floor that connect our continents? And that is how we can talk to people on different continents, like a physical cable. And I'm running campaigns like move this cable so that we could move one of a planned route of a transatlantic cable to connect one of the most remote islands in the world. And I have to explain like what a submarine cable is and why it matters. It was tough. Another thing that we did, we tried to crowdfund the purchase of a satellite. before Kickstarter was really taking off, we led this campaign where this satellite company was going bankrupt. It's called TerraStar. Sounds like Death Star. It's not. This is a very common arc of satellite companies, by the way. Like they all love to like build them, then they go bankrupt, and they get bought, and then they go bankrupt again. It's sort of it's like a thing.
Yeah, Iridium did that, right?
Iridium did that. It was like $4 billion to build.
Yeah, and then what's the...
sold for 34 million. 34 million, that's quite a discount.
Yeah, then what's the other radio station stuff that's on, right? That went bankrupt too. It was a satellite. Sirius, yeah. So, I mean, it's, you're same thing.
Did they go bankrupt?
Oh, yeah. And then they were merged. Anyway,
yeah,
another story.
They're just all...
So where does all that stand now? I mean, have Branson and Zuckerberg and Elon come to you now and thanked you? I guess that's
No.
No, but seriously though, are you still? You've got all of us, and so what's going on? What's the plan?
Well, running a telecommunications nonprofit is a really tricky idea. Begging for money is not my strong suit, and there was a lot of begging for money. And that was kind of like was the limiting factor. I was like, I got all these projects, I want to do these things. And I was begging on both sides. I was trying to build something called the Bandwidth Bank. Heartbreaking. There's all this unused internet capacity on like satellites and cellular networks and wired networks all over the world. It's just unused. It sits there. And I want to build like a food bank, like where you literally, like, you donate food to the food bank, it goes to someone who needs it. They would say, we will assign this unused asset to you, and we would put it to work for humanitarian and social causes. They could care less. They like telecommunication companies were like, oh, that's so nice. We'll string you along for another 6 months and then tell you no. So there was a lot of heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. My favorite story was like NATO. They have all this unused bandwidth in Afghanistan for getting schools online, universities. And in the universities in the evenings are not, people don't really hang out on the university campuses on the weekends. And I knew a bunch of nonprofits out there, and they had built something called the J-Link, which was connecting all these nonprofits to like the limited supply of internet they had in Afghanistan. And I said, NATO, can we borrow that unused internet and put it through this J-Link to connect all of the nonprofits out there? And I got all these people would love that, would love to put their videos up on the internet, would love to do that. And NATO's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We love that. We love that. Yeah, you should totally do that. Here, look, here's a chart of all our unused bandwidth. And I'm like, great. And they're like, why don't you come to Afghanistan? It's like, yeah. And I found someone to fly, like, sponsor me to fly to Afghanistan. Oh God, I'm so glad I didn't go. And then all it was in place, it was ready, and then I get a phone call from the guy, and he's like, yeah, that's a great idea, but we can't do it. And I'm like, what? I did all this stuff. Like, I just worked on this for so long. He's like, no, we can't do it, because it's politics. It's politics. And that was like one of the many, like, Intelsat has so much C-band spectrum that just sits around doing nothing. And I know all these people who would just love it. Even if they have to lug in an antenna that's like as big as a dinner table, even if they had, like, they would just find so much use for it. And I'll give you an example, like in Afghanistan specifically, like in a place where women are being, acid is being thrown on them, where they're being hurt just for going to school, women have built a women's only cyber cafe. And are using it as like a safe refuge so women can learn like job skills and learn this stuff. And the internet has rallied and given them money so that they can survive, but internet access is expensive out there. And I'm like, we could get them online. We could keep them online. How cool would that be? Anyway, it was a nonstop heartbreak. That's on the getting the telecommunications side. Now on the fundraising side, I'm out in San Francisco hanging out with all the people who made all of their money off internet access, and they could care less. And that was just another heartbreak too. So that was like 4 years of that. It was a good long while, and I was like, why am I working so hard and not having the impact that I want and scaling back my ideas when I'm working in a $1 trillion industry? Like, telecommunications is a $1 trillion industry. Why don't I just build a telco? Why don't I do that? Why don't I just go build it and like do it a more like traditional corporate way or something along those lines? And that was the impetus behind all of us, which is you guys all have cell phones. We're a cell phone provider. We operate a network. We purchase the use of a network in the United States. All of our plans start at free, so you get free bandwidth from the get-go every month. And when you run out, you can buy more. And when you buy more, we keep track of how much bandwidth is sold. And we launch, once we hit a certain amount of bandwidth that's sold, we launch a connectivity project somewhere in the world to get more people online. And it's a really scalable idea. We can launch freemium networks, on the back of any network in the world. And then we can basically take a portion of our profits to increase the internet penetration in the places that don't have internet. So it meets all my goals. Free internet for the places that have it, and then expand the reach of internet access that don't have it. And that was the goal, and I've been working on that for the last year and a half. But the minute you get into a VC's office and you say we're a social enterprise, they're like, we're not listening anymore. And that's been just another big challenge. So, but I keep working on it.
So is that all of us?
Yeah, it's all of us.
So, it's interesting because on the one hand, you're hearing an innovator, curious individual, obviously an extraordinarily bright individual who actually has had incredible success. And then you also see the reality of the world and, if you will, non-visionary people, or oftentimes the reality and the struggle of people who try so hard to do wonderful things and they keep getting stonewalled and disappointed. But I think the wonderful thing here is you don't give up. And while one project may not work, another.
I don't mind. I don't feel bad. I feel that we're in a new era. A new time where the values are shifting. No longer, the fact that you made $1 billion, who cares? The fact that you helped 1,000 people, 1 million people, remove them from poverty, did something to improve the lives of others, I think that is the new currency and the new social currency that makes someone worthwhile. I know my generation embodies this in a big way. And for me, that's why it's unfortunate. I'm just kind of on the cusp of a little bit of shift in thinking where, I'm talking to older individuals who have money and they're like, well, what's in it for me? And I'm like, what's in it for you is the world. Like this is, we're trying to improve the human condition here. This is for your children. My heroes, Jonas Salk, guy who gave away the polio vaccine and just like, take it because he couldn't stand to see another person die of polio. He couldn't, while he was like getting rich off it. Volvo, who gave away the patent for the seatbelt because they wanted everybody to have that. Elon Musk is kind of doing a similar thing, giving away patents for the electric vehicles so that can grow the electric vehicle market, which is a great way to help with global warming. These people and that kind of ethic is what the future, in my opinion, needs to look like. Those are going to be the people, the heroes of our time. And it's just a matter of time before that becomes a thing. They're my heroes at this point.
We're going to have some question and answer. Anybody?
Well, can I go on all of us? And can I encourage my friends to go on all of us? How do you get to all of it?
Well, so our plan, we need to raise a certain, it's kind of like, this is the tricky part, because right now in Silicon Valley, they give money to ideas that have traction, right? So if you have it's really easy to kind of build an app and kind of get it out there and iterate on it. But unfortunately, like we're building a car, and everybody knows what a car is, and they have certain expectations of a car, and the first car always costs like $1 million to build a car, and then they get cheaper thereon. That's sort of the same thing for this company. So I can't actually sell a service. There's so many expenses that are required to get it all built and going before I could actually give you something that you could use. Just to get the contracts in place. Like, they're already in place, but just those costs to build those sort of things. So that's the continued challenge, raising that capital to build, to make the dream come true. So not yet. But I'll call you. I'll write you an email.
And how many people can you potentially sell this idea to? I mean, all these angels, where are they? Do you know any angels?
Yeah, I've talked to lots of them. Talked to lots and lots of different people, and people have been very kind to connect me further. It's about finding the right people for this kind of venture. We see all these companies right now are in the middle of a huge boom in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, of tech companies, but very few of them have a bigger vision of service or do anything better than like allow you to share your photos easier, allow you to be a narcissist, more streamlined process. Like, and that's unfortunate. But I know that there's a group, there's people out there who want to do something a little bit bigger, a little bit better with their money, and invest in companies that have these dual returns, financial and social. It's just a matter of tracking them down.
Yes, ma'am.
I worked for several years in fundraising and strategic partnerships for Wikipedia and then for Creative Commons. And I'm very kind of familiar with the world that you're talking about and the challenges around funding. And I think the first question I have is, why isn't all of us a nonprofit? And the second is, well, I have a few, which is more, when I was at Wikipedia, we did a study on internet access and how everything's going to be mobile, right? And reaching people, especially in Africa and other kind of far reaches of the world where those cables that you're talking about do not reach there. So kind of what are your thoughts about mobile access and kind of what that's going to lead to in the future? And also, I'm wondering kind of like, what about, it sounds like you work for MIT Media Lab, and so people like Nicholas Negroponte and Joey Ito and the projects that they've launched, kind of what have you taken from their exemplars? And then what about this incredible duplication of effort that's going on across the nonprofit industry, right, around all these groups and for-profit, trying to do the same thing and trying to develop strategic partnerships between these?
Okay, where do I start?
Sorry.
That was great. That was great.
10 questions, 3 hours.
Well, the first one, why aren't we a nonprofit, is because I did the nonprofit thing. We're a benefit corporation, so we're a B Corp. And I thought that was a nice, happy medium between, I thought it would allow me to kind of explore both worlds, the nonprofit, which I kind of knew a lot about, and then the for-profit, which I was still learning about. In terms of cellular service, like, yeah, that's the future in all these places. LTE is so fast, and you can cram so many people on a network. We've already seen this, like, people they skip wired networks. Whether satellite will come in and be a player, which it never really has been, is a curious question. Because that's what people are working on now. And that's how I started this, actually. I wanted to build a satellite network. How I was going to raise that kind of money. And in terms of, like, I've spoken with Nicholas many times, like MIT Media Lab people. Like, we're all in the same orbit, but Nicholas is working on computers specifically, and Joe Ito, I've never met him yet, but he just came in when I was at the Media Labs.
How do you foresee kind of building some bridges with with nonprofits and for-profits that are kind of doing the same thing? Like, you're talking about all these groups that are doing the same thing that you want to do. Everybody has the same goal, right? Internet and access, universal access. Whether they're, I don't know if everybody's, I've always been based on Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right? I think that's the most important thing for the work that we're doing in terms of like getting universal access to people and creating an argument around social justice. But how do you create those partnerships to forge these alliances that will strengthen your work rather than having this duplication of effort that weakens it?
Well, I think that's the new wave of nonprofits. I think donors have to start demanding that, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's hard. It is super hard. We were talking about fundraising out in the hallway. It's not fun. It is so much work. It's a full-time job. It's a full-time job of numerous people. And the amount of marketing and resources that go into convincing people to part their dollars for something bigger is a lot of work. And if you want nonprofits to not be competing for those dollars, donors need to be savvier and incentivize that kind of behavior in what they're doing, and hopefully do it without creating a bureaucratic mess.
I think one of the other challenges, at least my own experience, has been that you could have 4 or 5 nonprofits who are in a similar space, but typically the founder of the nonprofit, their identity is wrapped up in being the founder of this incredible nonprofit. And when you talk about let's all get together and make one great nonprofit that does essentially the same thing, it's almost impossible because of ego, right? And it's very, very difficult.
The industry kind of eats itself in a weird way.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. So I think that's one of the challenges, and frankly, that is one of the challenges of the human condition is ego. And just like Costa was saying, is that you ask him this question, yet he has called all of these people up, and unless you're in the super special group, they don't take your calls because you're not special enough, or you're not important enough, or you don't have a high enough profile, or you don't have 10 or 20 billion in the bank. We're talking about an event which theoretically was to bring people together. What was it called? The group out in the ocean?
Seasteading Institute?
Yeah. So, here we were just talking about this. You have one which is, families, one which was
the family boat, there was the party boat, and then there was the rich people boat. Then
right.
there's like a flotilla. The boats are like tied together. They're trying to, how do you say it? Like they want to build a sovereign country on the ocean.
But we're all equal, and we're all the same, and we're all here for the same mission, but our space is over here, and we're the special ones, and then everyone else is over here, and if we, for whatever reason, need you, want you, etc., we might invite you over to our special place. And that's the problem, I think. So it's unfortunate, and there are some very enlightened people, I think, around, but it's a process, and you just have to keep struggling and keep showing up and keep your agenda and try to keep your own integrity, and and I think that's the key. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Have you talked to any of the NGOs that are having trouble in their host countries because they don't see eye to eye with the governments there? We see articles about this. Certain countries are unhappy with the Gates Foundation because they're coming in with one idea, and the governments in those countries have a different idea. It sounds like you could be sort of in the middle there and kind of help them.
I honestly, I'm like out of that space. That world is not really the thing. It's not going to solve this problem. So I moved out of that space. I know it's not going to solve this problem.
Well, maybe the bigger question, okay, you're talking about this millennial world that sounds obviously very appealing. Where do you see the tipping point, and what does that tipping point look like, where you guys really start to have a lot of influence? Is it a function of time? Is it a function of various things happening, enlightened VCs putting money into strategic projects? Where do you see that coming together? I mean, if you could look down the road like 5, 10, 15 years and you say, okay, that was it. That was when it really started to tip.
Well, I think it kind of has to do with the internet, because I have to tie everything in the internet. I have to tell you a little bit about this take 3 minutes. Your body is a collection of cells. your cells have evolved in such a way to work. Each one's a living entity in and of itself. You remove it, it will live for a little while, and it will die because it doesn't have its support system to keep it alive. We all evolved from single-celled organisms. We became more complicated, and we ultimately, the cells became differentiated in such a way that they could solve very specific problems. So you have cells in your gut that process food, that feeds there's the food processing center for your entire body. You have cells in your brain that help you to think and can control all of your muscles and nerves and tendons, which are also individual cells that do their own thing. And your body is like a really collaborative effort at the end of the day. And a lot of people don't think about how collaborative our bodies are. Sometimes they go rogue, you get some cancer, something terrible like that. It's not collaborating anymore. So really unfortunate. But our society has reflected this in its entirety. In its entirety. We're reflecting the same evolution of our bodies in the same way. The agricultural revolution, we invented something called the farmer, whose sole job is to feed society. He is the same kind of entity as sort of your stomach that feeds all the cells in your body. The Industrial Revolution, we invented machines and the machinists and the people who can extend the reach of our arms and our muscles and our limbs so that we can lift more and we can do more and we can be stronger than we ever were before. The Computer Revolution invented our ability to think and store thoughts and things like that. And we're in the middle of a brand new one, which is the Internet revolution, which is our ability to communicate with one another. Our ability of our cells, our nervous system, if you will, to communicate with one another. The Internet is this incredible tool that allows all of humanity to communicate and collaborate in real time, the same way that our bodies can, like I have a thought and I can wiggle my toe, like it's the same thing. So when I see internet access being spread around the world, I feel like we're building the nervous system for society that will allow us to collaborate and create and build and grow as a functional society in a ways that you can't even imagine. What happens when the entire organism, because we'll be like an organism of humans, our humanity, what will we be able to accomplish when we're all connected? And so that's kind of a deeper rationale for why I do what I do and why I think it's important. But it's really it's a way to understand why I think like millennials are becoming more compassionate. Well, the internet is a tool for empathy. All of a sudden, I can feel what somebody feels in Ukraine or Syria or around the world. All of a sudden, I can witness it and experience it. I have eyes on in every single country. And I'm able to tell stories, share my own stories, hear stories, and it's an empathy machine, because no longer are we walking alone, individual human beings. We're no longer alone in this world. We are connected, not just as a culture, not just as a nationality, not just as a gender, but as an entire human race. And that is a special time. And when that's finished, because we're not done yet, we're only 4 billion people are disconnected right now, 7 billion people on the planet. We're only 3 billion people in. What's the world going to look like? That's exciting. That's what gets me really excited.
Yes, sir.
How do you see yourself evolving in the next 10 years?
I don't know. Plenty, I'm sure. I don't know. How do you see yourself evolving?
Just to comment on, it was interesting because you talked about Bill Gates and the foundation. There's just an article, and it shows you, though, you go in one direction and you think that's the right thing to do, but then you find out that there are other things that are happening. And people talk about technology or the internet and how it's going to be this wonderful thing, but you can't use the internet if you're hungry. You can't use the internet if you don't have power. You can't use the internet if you have diarrhea because you don't have clean water. And so it's interesting because I think the internet's incredibly important, but there's this article, and it was talking about how the Gates Foundation has given away all these mosquito nets, right? But it was going to these different countries, and it gave one particular example, which I can't remember what country it was, but these people are fishermen, right? And what they've done, though, is because they don't have enough to eat, they've taken the mosquito nets, which are incredibly strong, sewn them together, and are using them as nets to catch fish. And they're saying, and you know, they interview the people, and they say, well, the nets are great, but if we don't eat, we're not alive. So we're taking the nets, the children aren't using them, we're not using them because we need to feed ourselves. So the whole idea about, yeah, but mosquito nets are great, the internet's great, but if you can't feed yourself, the internet has no use. And I'm afraid in some ways that's part of the problem, because, you know, I hear some of our famous tech people going, the internet's going to solve every problem in the world by this connection, but if you can't eat, it's not going to solve any problem. You know, and I think that's, so there is a caveat to the use of technology, I think, that it doesn't solve every problem, and you have to be more thoughtful about some of these other issues. You know, when you talk about, you know, 4 billion people don't have internet, well, how many billions of people don't get enough food to eat? And how many billions of people don't have clean water? You know, those are the real problems.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think that internet feeds people, but it does teach them how to feed themselves. It has that opportunity. And I think education, we are here in Stanford, education is the most vital tool for helping people to allow them to solve their own problems. And if you think of internet as just a tool for education, nothing more. And there's many ways to look at what internet access is. If you look at it just as that, it can create a lot of value.
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. I'm not countering that. I'm just saying this is also something you have to think about. Yes, ma'am.
Just to comment, I think nothing solves 100%, whether it is a food or a village. I'm Ethiopian, but from my experience, when there was a starvation in Ethiopia, the northern part there was a drought, the southern part was very good, there was a lot of food. One of the problems was transportation, so food could not go to the north. So if there were transportation, there wouldn't, a lot of people would have survived. So technology can help, even though it doesn't feed. So we have everything. So we need to work from every direction.
Well, you know, that brings up an interesting point, because if we look at the technology that our military has, logistics, et cetera, supply chain, imagine instead of the military being a source of destruction and death, if, as you pointed out, there is a world military where they would see a problem like this and they would drop parachutes with trucks or whatever and create a whole team of people who would create that supply. That's what we should be doing as a world, right? I think we've run out of time. Thank you all again for coming. I hope this has been interesting and informative. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.